Hey, has anyone seen my wallet? I've been looking for like 5 minutes and I can't find it anywhere. I kept it. I kept it in the exact same spot that I always left it, which is right there. How am I supposed to buy movie tickets or concessions? Uh, Pikachu, Pikachu. I swear to God, if you took my wallet to go buy 50 billion more bottles of ketchup, I swear to God, I am going to give you to Team Rocket, and they are gonna. Oh, no face. Totoro. Gigi. You found my wallet. Cool. Oh, gotta go. Movie time. I got 2 movies to see, then I gotta review them, and it's same thing I always do. Thanks. You can look away now. I'm just... Look, if you're trying to ask me to rank all of your movies, then that is a very stupid question. Of course I will! Right now, in fact. Hey guys, what is up? This is Matthew Davis, me once again. Welcome back to another ranking video. This is kind of a list that I've wanted to do for a while, but I just haven't had the time to do it just because of you know what. If you've been watching my channel, I make the same excuse over and over and over again. But I have watched every single Studio Ghibli film recently. It took me, I don't know why it took me a while to fully watch all of them, but I finally did. So now I'm going to do my ranking on all 23 of Studio Ghibli's films. Studio Ghibli is a very important part of the anime industry. When people think of anime movies, they usually think of Studio Ghibli. You know, it's one of the biggest animation studio companies of all time. From Hayao Miyazaki to Isao Takahata to massive directors behind this company. Miyazaki, of course, being the founder of it, and he's the one who started this whole thing and created a massive library of movies, and almost all of them succeed. And this was way before Pixar and DreamWorks hit the mark. They've been doing this since the 80s, and Miyazaki supposedly said he was completely retired, but he did announce that he was going to be coming out of retirement for one more film. And from what I looked up, it's supposedly supposed to be called How Do You Live? We don't know what the entire story is. There's no trailer yet, but it's not supposed to come out for 4 years. Hopefully that'll be worth it, because Ghibli's last film scared me. And not like the scared, like, it's... The best way I can put it is like it scared me for what will happen to the future of Ghibli. But anyways, let's begin, alright? This was kind of a really hard ranking for me to do. So, of course, I should always point this out there. This is my personal list. All the rankings are going to be different from your rankings. So, your rankings aren't going to be the same as mine. This is just my own personal pick. The bottom choice and the very top choice are very cliched choices. So, I just make these lists because I want to have fun making them. So, yeah, this wasn't a hard list to make, but I think I finally figured out what should go and where in my personal order of Studio Ghibli films. Alright, starting off at the very, very bottom with the top 23 is the only one that I truly do not like, and that is Earwig and the Witch. Earwig and the Witch doesn't even feel like a Studio Ghibli film, and not because it's the first and so far only Ghibli film to go completely CG'd. It's the fact that it doesn't have the same likable characters that Studio Ghibli is best known for. I think Earwig is probably the worst protagonist in all of the Ghibli films. I mean, the movie just felt like a mess. It had a generic story and characters that were just completely unlikable. Though I will admit, you know, it took Disney a while to fully get CGI animation right. And they've been pulling it off throughout the entire decade of the 2010s. So maybe Ghibli could do something like that, and CGI anime can be done right. Now, I respect Goro Miyazaki, okay? He's the son of Hayao Miyazaki, and he took a lot of inspiration from him. And I definitely do have respect for him. In fact, I do like one of his movies, okay? But just this one right here, it's just... I thought my next entry on here would be far the worst. I don't think there could have been a single one worse than my next entry, but there was, and it's this one. It's just a movie that I will remember for one thing. It's being kind of a disaster to a very beloved company, and hopefully they won't make this mistake again. At number 22, I have Tales from Earthsea. At the time, people consider this to be the weakest point of Ghibli's library. Now, this isn't a terrible movie by any means necessary. I don't think it's a complete disaster. I just think it's kind of forgettable. Like, I didn't really care for the characters. I mean, the relationship that the main character and the girl had was a lot stronger during the second act. And the animation is stunning as always. In fact, almost all of these movies have amazing animation. I mean, flawless. Just Earwig and the Witch. I didn't think the animation was bad in that movie. I just thought it didn't feel like Ghibli. Just like a video game version of Ghibli. And there actually was a video game version of Ghibli called Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch, which is an amazing game, and I highly recommend playing it. It's available on remasters, but that's beside the point. The point is, I didn't really feel like this movie had that much memorable of a story, though I feel like it's alright for the debut of Goro Miyazaki following in his father's footsteps. It's just that I feel like the movie kind of felt a little bit like Princess Mononoke a little bit much, just with not as much action. I mean, there are some pretty disturbing moments that truly earned it its PG-13 rating, but in the end, I feel like it's a little too overly long, and I just felt like it was just kind of bland for the most part. But it's not a bad movie, just one that is pretty forgettable. Alright, next up is the one that I watched most recently, and that is Ocean Waves. I didn't even know this movie existed. Well, it's probably due to the fact that it's a TV movie, and when I see people do, like, Ghibli list, I usually don't see this movie on there. And I could kind of see why, though this movie is good, though I don't really feel like it's that memorable in terms of, Ghibli quality. I mean, it's a teen drama, and the title is a little misleading, Ocean Waves. I mean, I don't really feel like the relationship between the boy and the girl, like the teen drama relationship, was very strong, but for a TV movie, I think it's very respectable. I mean, it's not overly long. It's probably the shortest out of Ghibli's library, outside The Cat Returns, which I will be getting into. But this movie, I thought was good. I mean, I kind of connected to the characters just a little bit. And there are some times where the movie just certainly, wanted to get to the point of its story. Just, it's not overly long, like I mentioned before. Though, for a TV movie, I think it does do a respectable job of, I guess, being a made-for-TV Ghibli film. Though, Ghibli, I think, is best seen on the big screen for the first time in Japan. So, I guess there's that. But Ocean Waves is nowhere near as memorable as some of the other films on this list. It's just one that is just, okay, I watched it, liked it, but probably never going to watch it again. Coming up at number 20, I have From Up on Poppy Hill. Now, this is by far Goro Miyazaki's best work, but that's not really saying much, okay? First time I watched this movie, I was all like, okay, pretty solid enough, but it didn't, fully wow me. I mean, this was just a film that I felt like, I did kind of connect to the characters a little bit once I was watching the movie, but, the movie's only an hour and 30 minutes long, and I think this was definitely more of a step up to Goro Miyazaki's career. And I felt like the story was a little bit weak, but it was definitely by far the strongest story out of his movies. But I don't know, I just don't really feel like this is one of the more rewatchable Ghibli films. I just feel like this is more of the, watch it one time. I feel like you should just watch this if you just feel like watching every single Ghibli film, though. So you will be able to have seen all Ghibli's film. Okay, that really did not make a lot of sense. Okay, I really need to work on my grammar a lot better for this, but nonetheless, From Up on Poppy Hill is worth watching once, but I feel like that's pretty much it. Alright, number 19 is another film that I kind of didn't know fully existed, and that is My Neighbors, the Yamadas, right? The Yamadas, yeah, My Neighbors, the Yamadas, okay? Now, this is a very unconventionally animated film. I mean, a lot of the animation is designed with the characters, and there isn't that much to the background. But this was actually a very charming film. I mean, it follows a family known as the Yamadas, and of course, they're dealing with their almost every single day life. They're pretty much just going through, it's basically a dysfunctional family, pretty much. Like, you got the mother, the father, the brother, the sister, the grandma, and there are some very comedic elements here and there, and Isao Takahata is known for having some very dramatic moments in his films, and some deeply emotional ones. And this one, I can say, is very lighthearted, and is one that I'm probably not going to remember for its story, or necessarily its characters, but its witty charm and its unique animation style definitely make this movie worth a watch. At number 18, I have Pom Poko. This is a very bizarre one. This movie follows a family of raccoon dogs who are trying to defend themselves from, of course, humans. And this is a very unique one, but a very bizarre one. For one thing, the raccoon dog things, they fly with their testicles. I'm not even joking. I didn't even notice that until recently when I looked more through it. Like, I did not, but yeah, this is a very weird one, but it's a very charming one. I do think it's a little too overly long, and I don't really find that many of the characters fully memorable. I mean, most of them just look the same, which was kind of hard for me to fully, like, write down who was who. But I thought the story was very charming, very strong, and it does tackle the issue of, animals trying to keep their home safe from invasions and stuff, and, keeping peace with the animals. And it's a very strong story. Not a fully rewatchable one, but it's definitely worth a watch. Maybe two. At number 17, I have The Cat Returns. I love cats, and seeing cats in any type of animation or any type of movie really brings joy to me, and this film definitely brought joy to me. It follows, of course, a girl who saves a cat from almost being hit by a truck, who was the king's only son, and she gets transported to this cat world where she has to marry, and she gets turned into a cat herself. So this cat that was seen in another Studio Ghibli film, Whisper of the Heart, which I also will be getting to. This is kind of like the follow-up to that film, and it's more focused on, of course, the one character known as Baron, and of course the relationship that him and the girl had. I kind of forgot what the girl's name was, but that's okay, because I will be seeing a re-release of it this Saturday, or no, not Saturday, Sunday, with my sister. I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, this is a pretty underrated film, and I highly recommend giving it a watch if you're a fan of Whisper of the Heart or any Ghibli film. It's definitely one of the more underappreciated ones on this list, and it's one that I highly recommend. At number 16, we got the Studio Ghibli film that started it all and was the start of a great director's career, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. This is truly a very strong start with a director's career. This is another pretty underappreciated film. I think Nausicaa is a very, very likable main protagonist. She's both a mixture of warrior and a pacifist at the same time, and it's a visually stunning journey, and it shows exactly what Miyazaki is capable of and what the future of his career holds. And it's an adventure that I truly had a fun time with, and I truly feel like it definitely deserves a watch for people who are fans of Miyazaki and haven't seen this one. I mean, this is the film that started off his career, and while some people might actually love this movie a little bit more than I did, this is truly one that I still feel like deserves a recommendation for Ghibli fans out there who haven't seen it. At number 15, I have The Wind Rises. Yeah, I do own some of the Ghibli films on Blu-ray. Just why aren't you showing any of the Blu-rays? Because I don't own them yet. That's why I'm kind of thinking about getting all the Studio Ghibli films on Blu-ray. The only one I don't think I want to own is Earwig. I mean, I'm fine with getting Tales of Earthsea and everything else, just so I'll have them. I mean, I own all of them. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, but anyways, The Wind Rises. This was supposedly Hayao Miyazaki's last film, but like I said before, he mentioned that he was coming out of retirement for one last film. And if this was his last film, it would still be a really great one. I mean, it's a beautiful story. It has a very strong relationship. This is actually one I haven't seen in quite some time since I first watched it, and that was like years ago. But I remember the music being phenomenal. I remember the story being very strong. I remembered it being kind of disturbing at some parts, also earning its PG-13 rating. But what more can I say? The Wind Rises is definitely one that I do see myself rewatching in the near future. I mean, and you know, those airplane scenes were absolutely outstanding to look at. So I don't know. This is probably one I should have rewatched first or before doing my ranking, but I just remembered really enjoying this one, and hopefully it'll hold up, and I'm sure it will. I mean, it's Miyazaki. At number 14, I have When Marnie Was There. This is another anime film that might kind of fall under people's radar a bit, but this is one that I still strongly recommend. The friendship between Anna and, or Anna, I think it's Anna and Marnie are very strong, and it messes with your mind to getting you to think if Marnie really was there the whole time. But it's a very strong story about friendship and you know, going through life and meeting that one person that you always wanted to be friends with. And it was very engaging with its beautiful animation. And it was surprisingly pretty well paced too. For an hour and 40-minute movie, it felt more like an hour and 10 minutes. So that shows that Studio Ghibli films can be very well paced if you do focus on the movie and engage yourself with the story. And this is one of those movies that had a really strong story that I connected with throughout its runtime. And I really, really dug it. At number 13, I have Whisper of the Heart. Whisper of the Heart is, you know, a lot of these movies, you're more familiar with films like Howl's Moving Castle and Princess Mononoke, or Spirited Away, or Totoro, or all those other films. But films like this, some people forget that Studio Ghibli made films like this. Like, sure, they can do very good stuff with magic and adventure, but with drama, they are also very good at the drama part as well. And this one has a really good sense of drama. It involves the relationship between a girl and a boy who keep checking out the same books, and their connection starts getting a little bit stronger. Like, of course, there's also the song that they play, Country Road. And I thought it had a very, very solid ending. And yeah, it's a movie that will really stick with you long after the credits roll. And it's truly one in Ghibli's library that I think is highly worth giving a watch. At number 12 is Porco Rosso, the story of a pilot who turns into a pig and was originally called Marco Rosso, but is now called Porco Rosso. So it's kind of like the Frog Prince story, except it's the pig prince, and he's not a prince, he's a pilot. But yeah, this film takes place in the 1930s and involves Porco or Marco Rosso. And what's very cool about this movie is that Michael Keaton actually played the English voice of Porco Rosso. So that's another reason to watch it. But yeah, this is another one I felt like had a very strong ending. And it's also very entertaining. It's a very well-paced film, and it's a film that has aged very, very well. In fact, almost all these movies I felt have aged very, very well with their style and their stories and stuff like that. It's a very engaging one, and definitely one that you should also check out. I should really stop saying that. You pretty much get my point. Coming in at number 11, I have Only Yesterday. Only Yesterday follows the life of a young girl who, the older version of that girl basically tells the story of her life that pretty much just feels like it recently happened, pretty much. And the stuff that goes on through this young girl's life, it's very fascinating. And for a PG-rated movie, it can get away with quite a bit. Like, there's a lot of mentions about periods and stuff, which is kind of weird, but it just shows that, you know, young girls can learn, you know, very disturbing stuff very early. Isao Takahata definitely made a masterpiece with this one. You know, I thought this movie came out earlier, but it came out in 1991 because, you know, it didn't really look like a 1991 movie. It definitely felt more like a 2000s movie. So, again, an animated film from Ghibli that has aged very, very well. And a very, very well animated movie equals one that will age super well in the future. And this also focuses on drama, and this is another fantastic drama from Ghibli, showing that they can go into any single genre and make it great. At my number 10 spot is Miyazaki's second animated film, Castle in the Sky. A very, very beautiful tale with a very strong romance, and it involves the girl, you know, falling from the sky and meeting with this guy, and actually, Mark Hamill plays one of the voices in here. So, you know, and that was just like 3 years after he did Star Wars. So, yeah, that's pretty impressive if you know what I mean. And it's a very fascinating adventure and a great and unique and original story. Miyazaki, like I mentioned before, had a strong career ahead of him, and this film truly proves it. And again, this is an 80s film, but it definitely feels like it was more made in like the 2000s, early 2000s to be exact. So it really does show. And this isn't the only movie in Studio Ghibli's library that has Castle in it. That's not really important, but I feel like I should bring that out. So, I don't know. At number 9 on my list is Kiki's Delivery Service. This is probably my sister's favorite Ghibli film. I mean, she loves this film. She talks about this film like a lot. This is probably like, she watched it a lot when she was little. I mean, I watched it when I was little too. Well, not too little, probably like when we were like 8 or 9. Or when I was 9, she was like 4. I don't know. But anyways, this is a very, very excellent film. Another Miyazaki masterpiece involving a young girl who moves away from her home to start a new life in the town, showing that she can still do great things outside of the witch world. And she can be a great helper with delivering food or, you know, gifts and stuff. And it has some very memorable moments and iconic ones. Gigi is a very strong show stealer. It's a shame that the English voice actor who played Gigi died like years ago, which is a real shame. Rest in peace. Also, it has a really strong relationship between Kiki and this one boy who supposedly starts annoying her, but then the more she gets to know him, the better their bond becomes, especially towards the last act. I thought it was absolutely incredible. This is an incredible feature right here. At my number 8 spot, I have The Secret World of Arrietty. This is the Disney release back when Disney had rights to Ghibli. But Secret World of Arrietty is a very, very unique film. It tells the story of the borrowers, which actually has been told before in another movie that has nothing to do with this one. But in this film, we follow Arrietty as her and her family have to move when humans find out where they are. Though just before so, she makes a relationship with this young boy named Sho. He mentions how he is going to be going into surgery, though he might not survive it. And it's a very strong bond, even though they aren't on screen together that much. I feel like the world of Arrietty is very unique. When they're really, really small, they encounter like creatures that are far bigger than us. Like, I mean, they're regular size in that world, but it's a very engaging story. Despite its G rating, it can be quite tense. Well, not really tense, I would say kind of shocking. I mean, knowing the fact that this one guy is probably going to die, it shows that they could get away with G-rated stuff even in modern time. Though most stuff isn't G-rated anymore, that really shouldn't matter. This is a really, really fantastic film. At my number 7 spot, I have Ponyo. This is probably the Studio Ghibli film that I watched the most. I have watched this film so many times. This is actually the film that got me into Studio Ghibli. Like, yeah, this is the film that got me introduced to Miyazaki. While I watched Spirited Away first, though I didn't watch it as much as this one. But Ponyo has some very familiarities to The Little Mermaid. In fact, it's pretty much an anime version of The Little Mermaid, except the character is 5 years old. But I really thought this was a very engaging movie. I really loved the relationship between the two characters, Ponyo and Sosuke. It's a very fun adventure. This is one that I found myself being the most entertained by. I mean, the relationship between the characters and the English voice cast, too. Like, it has a crazy amount of English voice actors. From Tina Fey, Matt Damon, Betty White, rest in peace. Even Liam Neeson. That's right, Liam freaking Neeson plays one of the English voice actors and plays one of the English dubs in here. It's incredible. And while this doesn't have the most, I would say, original story, in fact, the story is kind of weird. I mean, when Ponyo does turn human, the entire world is like going to end, like the world is like going underwater. It's kind of a weird story, but I still found myself very engaged, and because the world's underwater, we get some really amazing ocean animation, and it is just out of this world, especially with the opening sequence and the music. It is all phenomenal. It might not be everybody's cup of tea, but this is one that I am always going to remember. That's why it's pretty high on this list. At number 6, I have The Tale of Princess Kaguya. This is a film that not many people went and saw. In fact, this was probably one of the most disappointing box office returns from an anime film. I mean, with a big name like Studio Ghibli, you would think it would be very popular. I'm not sure if it's due to the fact that it's animated a lot different, kind of like almost in the same. It's like the mixture of Studio Ghibli and My Neighbors the Yamadas, and you put it together and you get this. And Princess Kaguya is a very unique film. We see as a girl is born from a stalk of bamboo, and she grows up and she knowingly becomes a princess, and she grows up like really, really fast. And it's a 2-hour long movie. I think this might actually be Ghibli's longest film, and it really, really felt pretty well paced. I mean, there isn't a moment of filler in here. I really enjoyed what was going on screen and what was going on with Princess Kaguya, while the ending does kind of end on a whimper and not a very, like, I don't know, like a very happy-ish ending. Like, it's kind of a depressing one. But, hey, Asao Takahata also directed Grave of the Fireflies, so that shouldn't be surprising. But Princess Kaguya is by far Ghibli's most underappreciated film, and I highly recommend watching it. Even if that animation style doesn't remind you of Ghibli that much, I still highly recommend it. I mean, I think it's one of Ghibli's all-time greatest. At number 5, oh yeah, we're getting into the top 5 now, I have Howl's Moving Castle. A beautiful romance story. In fact, I feel like the relationship between Sophie and Howl is probably the best relationship in all of Studio Ghibli. We follow as Sophie gets cursed as an old lady and goes into Howl's castle, and something is going on with Howl. And from there, she makes relationships with a talking ball of fire, a young boy who can turn into an old man. And once in a while, there's a turnip head with a like a suit on, and that bounces around once in a while. It's a crazy movie and a very bizarre one, and it shows Miyazaki can do great things in animation, and this truly shows what he's capable of. I mean, it's, once again, also a 2-hour long movie, but it really doesn't feel that way. I watched it once on Blu-ray, once in the theater. In fact, I saw a lot of re-releases of Studio Ghibli films in the theater, and this was one of them. One day I was having kind of a downer day at work, but I went and saw the re-release of this, and I felt a lot better. So it shows how very uplifting this film is. It has a very beautiful score, and it's just a film that will stick with you for a very long time. I feel like it's one of Ghibli's most iconic films, and it's definitely one that you really, really have to watch if you're a Ghibli fan. Though you can't really be a Ghibli fan if you haven't seen most of the top 5 on this list. At my number 4 spot, I have Princess Mononoke. A very, very epic film, probably the most action-packed out of all of them. Of course, we follow, the princess who was raised by wolves, and of course you got this young man who goes out and finds her, and it's a very, very stunning film. I mean, again, this is another film that feels more like an early 2000s film than a 90s film. Like, I was blown away first time I saw a re-release of this in the theater. And the way I tell you about this film might make a little bit more sense if you watch my review of it, which was like 5 years ago. But I feel like I talk more about that film a bit better because I've only seen the film one time, but I feel like I remembered enough to really give you my thoughts on it. I mean, like I mentioned before, it has some of the best action and most stunning animation that most of the other Ghibli films have. It has some of the most iconic moments, and it's by far the most violent Ghibli film. I mean, I was very surprised of how much blood was in this movie for a PG-13 rated one, though it's not as bloody as, say, the recent Jujutsu Kaisen movie, but it's still pretty bloody, so it shows Miyazaki isn't always going for a kid-friendly route. So it shows that Miyazaki can make films that adults can enjoy just as much as kids can. Even the kids' ones, adults will appreciate a lot. Speaking of kid-friendly Ghibli films that adults will really have a great time with, at my number 3 spot, I have My Neighbor Totoro. Totoro is probably the most iconic Studio Ghibli character of all time. I mean, hell, he is on the freaking Studio Ghibli logo, so yeah. But what can I say about My Neighbor Totoro? It's a beloved film that I think every single kid who wants to start getting into Ghibli should start off with. This is pretty much the exact opposite of my number 2 spot, which kind of might be a spoiler, but yeah. My Neighbor Totoro has so many iconic scenes, and it has a very engaging story when two girls are sad because their mother is sick and hoping that she'll get better. Totoro comes around and makes things a hell of a lot better for them. From there, we see some of the most iconic scenes from, of course, the stuff that's growing out of the ground and the girls flying and stuff. And when Mei meets Totoro for the very first time, is just on his stomach. It just has so many iconic moments and so many iconic scenes. And it's a very heartwarming film, too. And one that leaves you on a good feeling towards the very end of the film. It's by far probably the most kid-friendly and the most uplifting of the Ghibli films, and it's an incredible film that I feel like every single Ghibli fan needs to have seen at least once in their life. Alright, so in my last entry, like I mentioned before, My Neighbor Totoro is a very kid-friendly movie, a very uplifting one with a very strong story, and is one that will leave you with some good feels once the movie was over. Yeah, this is the exact opposite. Grave of the Fireflies. While the story is great, but this is a very, very depressing movie. And I don't know how I was able to survive it 3 times, but yeah, that's right. I watched it 3 times, including a re-release in the theater. And yeah, it still hurts. But what really makes this movie great is how it shows how depressing and tragic war is. I mean, war is tragic. Hell, there's a war going on right now in another country, and we're all praying that it ends soon. So it shows that it still goes on, but yeah, this takes place like way, way back. It takes place during World War II, which was like, I don't know, I didn't get into all that history stuff, but what really makes this movie great is that you feel bad for the characters. A brother has to take care of his younger sister by himself and has to try to, get them to survive when their parents are completely dead. Like, you feel bad for them. And there are just so many, very strong moments of, dread and grief. Like, even the beginning, you knew bad stuff was going to happen, and they do happen, and it is very deep and it's very disturbing, and almost has you thinking, was this originally supposed to be R-rated? Like, it almost does feel that way, though it's not as bloody as Princess Mononoke, though it does have some very shocking imagery. So yeah, this is probably a Studio Ghibli film that is very, very hard to rewatch, but it is still one of the best animated films I've ever seen in my entire life. That's why I put it so high on here, because its depiction of war is very strong, and the way it handles its characters, if I didn't care for the characters, then I wouldn't have cared what was going on in this movie. It's a truly engaging film that you probably might never want to watch again, but it's on here very high just because of how much of an impact it left on me. And the back of the box says it has a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, when that is not true at all. And I'm glad it isn't. Also, what's kind of weird is that HBO Max has all the Studio Ghibli films, though it doesn't have Grave of the Fireflies for some reason. I don't know if it's because viewers might think it's too depressing when there is already a lot of content that is depressing on streaming services, but this is exactly why physical media is always necessary. And though I'm not sure when I'm going to rewatch this, I probably won't anytime soon, but I remember just enough to know that it will always stick with me, and it's really hard not to get teary-eyed. And it may be probably the most depressing anime film of all time, but it's by far one of the best, in my opinion. Number one needs absolutely no introduction. Spirited Away is a very unoriginal choice, but you know what? I don't care. It's my list, and it more than deserves the top spot. The very first Studio Ghibli film I ever watched, it was on like Cartoon Network a long time ago, like almost like, I don't know, 20 years ago. I don't know. I mean, the movie's 20 years old, so probably not that long ago, but I just remembered it was playing one time and I was all like, this is pretty interesting. The style isn't what I usually see in Cartoon Network. I mean, they do sometimes play anime, but yeah, Miyazaki's masterpiece is, I mean, it's Spirited Away. How could I have not put this on the top of the list? I mean, of course, following a young girl named Chihiro, whose parents get turned into pigs, and she has to work in order for her to get her parents back. And from there, so much crazy stuff happens. It's like an anime version of a Tim Burton film, pretty much. I mean, you got No Face, you got the man with spider-like arms, you got the old lady with the giant baby, and it's a bizarre movie that has so much. And a kid who once in a while will be with Chihiro, though throughout the film he struggles a lot in the film, and something happened to him, and Chihiro has to figure out, because he's a monster in some parts, and or a dragon and stuff like that. I'm spoiling too much. It's kind of really hard to spoil, but what anime fan has not heard of Spirited Away? I mean, it's an amazing film that just needs no introduction. But what makes this movie so special is all the stuff that Miyazaki can put into one specific film without it being completely confusing. And it's very magical, and it truly makes it have what a Studio Ghibli film should have. Drama, adventure, a very likable main protagonist, and some very interesting moments. It's a truly bizarre film that will stick with you long after the credits roll, and it's by far the most rewatchable Studio Ghibli film, and for it being 2 hours and 5 minutes long, it really doesn't feel that way. It felt way shorter than that, and it's a very well-paced movie. It's a very well-moving film, and for it being PG, there is some very disturbing moments that kind of has you questioning its PG rating a bit, but not to mention the fact that it's the first and only anime film to win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. And rightfully so, because while this movie was originally made in 2001, it didn't get like a Western release until 2002, and there really wasn't that many big animated films to come out in 2002. Pixar didn't make anything. I mean, sure, there was other films like Ice Age, Lilo and Stitch, but yeah, Spirited Away is a masterpiece, and it's one that has stuck with me for a very long time. It's not just my favorite Studio Ghibli film, it's my favorite anime film. It's also one of my favorite animated movies of all time, and probably one of my favorite movies of all time. And you cannot be a Studio Ghibli fan if you haven't seen this one. This is a must-watch if you want to get into the company. And that is my ranking for all 23 Studio Ghibli films. Hopefully there will be more that will be better than Earwig and the Witch. Hopefully Miyazaki's newest film, whenever that comes out, will be great. And hopefully it will be a great final movie of his. Some people say that directors' last movies aren't that good, but hopefully that won't be the case with Miyazaki, because when has Miyazaki ever disappointed? I mean, really. But yeah, I'll continue to rewatch these movies, at least the ones that I truly enjoyed, and I almost love all these movies, and yeah. And I highly recommend getting into The Company if you haven't heard of it or are going into. These are just like I mentioned before, this was just my personal ranking. You might not agree with everything on the list, but yeah, this was a surprisingly pretty long video. I've been doing this for almost an hour, so better get editing while I'm at it. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Word out.